Welcome to Our Girl Relationships. We talk about the problems people face in their day to day lives. Let's start with the video.
So, I divorced my husband a year ago when I found out he cheated on me. His behavior was utterly inexcusable because he didn't even have the audacity to come clean and kept on pretending like he hadn't gotten drunk and hooked up with his ex. Fortunately, the ex in question was crazy enough to show up to our house and confront him for ghosting her after getting her pregnant. She went full Amazonian warrior on his ass and asked him to take responsibility for his actions. And to be honest, even if she hadn't asked him to be the father, I would have still divorced him because who wants a cheater? The divorce was a pain in the ass, though. I fought for compensation for his adultery, but the judge ruled for a 50-50 division of assets, and in the end, he got to keep the house. I was burned over the ruling, but couldn't do anything about it. Now, a year later, he came over to my place unannounced and asked me to hear him out. I couldn't understand what else there was left to say, but seeing the desperation on his face, I let him talk. He told me that he has been thinking a lot about how everything happened, and suddenly he realized that something was wrong with what his ex-lover said. When I asked him what exactly his epiphany was about, he asked me if I remember how his ex showed up and started shouting and calling him out for ghosting her. But in actuality, the reason he ghosted her in the first place was because when he found out she was pregnant and that he's the father, he was too stunned to think of anything. He was ashamed because he didn't even remember the night it all happened, as he was too drunk and ended up blacking out. But he did remember waking up the next day next to her at their friend's place. At the time when she told him about the pregnancy, he didn't think she'd have a reason for lying to him. But in the past year, he has witnessed things that made him think hard about the past, and he is afraid that she might be tricking him into believing he's the father. Hearing him trying so desperately to believe there's a chance he didn't cheat was funny and pathetic at the same time. I wanted to tell him that even if what he's saying is true, I have nothing to do with it all, as he's in my past and not my problem anymore. But he begged me to believe him because he still loves me and would do anything to prove that to me. His declaration piqued my interest, and I asked him what exactly he was willing to do. And he said he'd get a DNA test. But that was something he'd eventually end up doing to find out the truth. So I told him that's selfish of him, and he started begging again and saying random stuff. One of the things he says was that he'll let me have the house and everything he owns. He was promising to take me to visit wherever I wanted, whenever I wanted, and to never let me lift a finger in my life if I just gave him another chance. Of course, it all sounded ridiculous, and I told him so before telling him to go back, 'cause I've heard enough. But 3 days later, he actually came over to my house and showed me the paperwork for transferring ownership of our old house. He said that if I promised to give him a chance and let him prove that he didn't cheat by taking a DNA test, he'd sign the papers with no questions asked. At that point, I didn't even know if it was funny anymore. His declaration of love was getting more and more pathetic, so I told him that I have a condition. I told him I'll let him come back if he signs the papers before taking the test and if he promises to cut all contact with all of his exes. I thought the sign of losing a house over a hunch was enough to scare him away, but I gotta give it to my ex-husband. He just asked for a pen, signed the papers, and handed them to me to get them checked by my lawyer. I was really amazed and almost felt something familiar for him. 2 days later, he took the DNA test, and we waited for another couple of days to get the results. I let him hang around the house whenever he came over, but never engaged in any emotional conversation or even gave him any accidental hints to let him think I have completely forgiven him. My lawyer got back to me around that time and told me that the house is now indeed under my name and I can do whatever I want with it now. A few days after that, we got the result for his DNA test and found out that his ex-lover really played him. He was not the father of that baby girl. And when I say he was mad, I mean it. His rage was beyond anything I ever saw, and he was pacing around the house cursing his lover. We went over to his house later where the girl was staying, and he confronted her right away about the whole situation. But she turned the tables around. She finally came clean about what exactly happened that night when all of them got drunk, and it turns out that she slept with two guys around the same time. One was my husband, and the other was one of their mutual friends from high school. She said that after the reunion, where they all got trashed, she was in contact with this other guy, and they became friends with benefits. The timing of being pregnant just overlapped, and she chose my husband as the father because she knew he would be a good father to her child. The whole thing was so messed up that I didn't stay there to listen to anything else. I took an Uber home and just thought about how complicated my relationship is with this man and how I want no part of it in my life. It was hard enough to move on once, but to let it all happen again would be like asking for trouble. Next day, I texted my ex-husband that I can't do this all over again and he shouldn't contact me. I wanted no part of his complicated life and thus I'm better left alone. Do you think I'm an a-hole for choosing myself this time, even though that man begged me so hard for forgiveness? I mean, he did cheat, regardless of whether or not he was the father. And even if the girl was still lying, shouldn't it be my choice to choose whether or not I want any part of this problem? So, my husband texted me today to meet up with him. He said that he wanted to talk it out one last time and also wanted to discuss the ownership of the house. I knew this was going to happen sooner or later, and my single text wouldn't mean a complete no contact from his side. I also knew that he at least deserves to know what I'm planning to do going forward, so I told him to meet me at a cafeteria just around the corner of my workplace. We agreed to meet tomorrow at lunch. Now, about the house. I've been thinking, and I don't think I'm going to let him have it back. I mean, he did sign it up willingly, and it's not like he's really poor or can't afford another house. He makes $80,000 a month, so it shouldn't be financially draining for him. And I want him to pay for being a cheater one way or the other. Call me an a-hole all you want, but I want revenge for what he did to me, even if he's actually living a hellish life right now. Either way, I'll update here once we meet up tomorrow. So I met him, and by the look on his face, he's been going through it. He had bags under his eyes, and he looked like someone who just woke up and put the first thing he could get his hands on. The haggard appearance did nothing to stop me from delivering more bad news to him. The first thing he said to me when we met was that he wants me to let him have another chance and he'll promise to be good this time. But I told him that I've moved on from whatever we had and want no part in his life. He looked crushed, but also nodded his head in understanding. I mean, it was a given at this point. There's no way we were getting back together. Then I told him that I'm keeping the house. He gave me as a sign of showing how much he loves me. Hearing this, he got angry and told me I can't do it because he only did it so I would believe what he said was true, and he was willing to go to any length for my forgiveness. At this, I told him he should consider himself forgiven, but I'm still keeping the house because no matter what, it was ours and he owes it to me after cheating on me. He got really pissed and told me that if I tricked him like this, he'd file a complaint, and I told him, go ahead, because he can't do anything about something that's legally mine now, and I walked out of there. Tomorrow, I'm going to talk to my lawyer just to make sure that he can't sue me in any way. But yeah, that's how our meeting went today. So I met my lawyer, and he told me that if there was proof of any kind of promise between my ex-husband and I, then he can actually sue me for pulling out after getting the house as a gift or that promise. But nothing we talked about was recorded in any form, so he can't do anything about me keeping the house. Also, it's been a week since we met, and I haven't received any mail telling me that someone has filed a case against me. I guess he's having trouble finding a lawyer who's willing to take on a case that's bound to be a loss. I'm just glad that I used my anonymous account to post the story here, and there's no way this could get back to me. Still, I'd probably end up deactivating this ID after this post just in case. Also, I've been talking to some real estate agents and have listed the house for sale. I hope I find a good deal soon so I can sell it and be done with it once and for all. Even though the house was where we spent the best days of our married life, it holds too many painful memories for me to keep it. Thankfully, I don't have to deal with eviction because my husband lives with his ex-lover at her place. I guess the universe is working in my favor after all this time. EAH. I don't even have to explain how every single one of you deserves all the worst things that are happening in your life. Y'all are a bunch of cheaters and players and deserve each other. NTA. As someone who faced a cheating ex, I can say that I'm happy you got to have your revenge because really, he deserves to lose something precious to him too. I'm 16, female. My parents aren't bad parents, they're just broke. And unfortunately, not taking your child to the dentist isn't a crime. My tooth broke the other day. It split in half, and the bigger half pretty much crumbled off. I feel like this could have easily been avoided if I was seeing a dentist regularly, but they're not cheap here, and I haven't seen one since I was like 8. My gum is swollen and sore, and the tooth itself hurts, which means there's probably no chance of saving it anymore. The yellow bit inside that was showing is now obnoxiously bright orange. I want to get this fixed ASAP because I don't want an infection or other teeth to be messed up by this one, which has happened before. I'm missing 2 molars on the right side of my mouth because of that, which is why I had to be taken to the dentist 8 years ago. Both had to be pulled out. I only got to go then because I got an infection that turned septic. I've been complaining of mouth pain to my parents for about 6 months, give or take. But my mom just gave me ibuprofen and told me it was just wisdom teeth coming in. So, like I said, the tooth crumbled and now it's been cutting the inside of my cheek. I can't really afford to lose another molar, but they've told me just let it fall out. I've told them I just want to go and see the dentist in hopes I might be able to keep it, but they're still saying it's not possible. I've asked multiple times a day since then and been met with a no each time. They said I can either take myself with my own money, I have none, or I can stop asking. I asked again about 30 minutes ago and I got met with, "Will you ever back off asking? We've told you no. Stop being like this." Now I'm feeling like an a-hole because I pushed my parents too far on this, and they rarely snap. AITA? NTA. This is not a minor issue. If you're enrolled in school, please go see a counselor now. Ask them for help because your parents are refusing to help. Sometimes dentists will offer treatment at a discounted rate in situations like these. There may be dental clinics or dental schools you can go to. Get someone on your side, counselor, teacher, pastor, grandparent, neighbor, and get this taken care of. NTA, a trip to the dentist, even in this state, is cheaper than a trip to the ER and is absolutely necessary. Find a local dentist, call them. This is what they would deem an emergency. You have an exposed wound with a high likelihood of infection that can spread to your brain. Explain to the dentist office your situation. They might be able to see you today and they might be able to provide you options for your financial situation. E.g., go to X, sign up for Y, we will do it for the expense of materials only, etc. Or they might tell you to go to the ER. Call them now. If you cannot and you go to a pediatrician, call the pediatrician for their recommendation. They might be able to get you in a program location to take care of this or prescribe you an antibiotic. If you are in the US and your parents cannot afford to insure you, you should be able to be covered by Medicaid. But I don't know if it would help in this time frame. NTA. I grew up with poor parents, and while the dentist was free here, the travel to there was not. My parents would have moved heaven and earth to get me there, even if it wasn't free. You are in pain with an infected tooth, and their reaction is to swear at you? Make you take care of it yourself? I hate to say this, but is there anyone else you can talk to about this? This is neglect. Like, I hate to break it to you, but this is straight up neglect. I know you don't want to get your parents in trouble, but you cannot compromise your health like this. Teeth are super important. Don't risk them. My husband and I do not have kids of our own, but we're very close to our 3 nieces. We've invested in a college fund for them over the years. When our oldest niece started college 4 years ago, we gave her $15,000 towards her tuition. This past fall, our younger 2 nieces started school. We had planned to give them the same amount. However, the past few years have been a bit tumultuous for us. I was without a job for a year, and when I started working again, I took a substantial pay cut. We also had to relocate for my husband's career, which meant spending more than we wanted to on a home in an overpriced market. Add poor stock performance to the mix, and when it came time to give our nieces their college fund, withdrawing $30,000 just wasn't realistic. We gave each niece $10,000 instead. My sister and her husband are now furious at us for treating their kids unequally. I initially apologized and explained that I understood how it could have come off that way, but these years have been hard, and we did the best we could. My view was that it was a gift, a substantial one at that, and they should be thankful that we were able to help them at all. My sister insists that if we hadn't been confident we could give the same amount to all 3 girls, we should not have given that much to the first one. The thing is, at the time, we were confident we could give the same to all 3, but things changed. She's also trying to argue that we should have bought a smaller house or moved into a cheaper neighborhood if buying this one meant we wouldn't have enough for the kids. AITA? I don't think I am, because it was a gift. We gave as much as we comfortably could, and we really were not obligated to give anything at all. But I will admit, my husband and I live a pretty comfortable life, and could have scrimped and saved to make this happen if we needed to. So maybe we should have just been fair. Gave niece number 1 cash for college. Financial position changed. Had to give nieces 2 and 3 less. Sister accused us of playing favorites. Could have scrimped and saved to give more, but didn't want to deal with that discomfort after a few hard years. NTA, it seems your sister has taken advantage of you, TBH. They're not your kids, but you love them so much you decided to help them out with $10,000? That's a huge help. And since you're not saying how the other 2 nieces reacted, I can only assume that they are extremely grateful for the help period. Even if it's barely smaller than what you gave their older sibling. If they do seem upset, I would just explain it the way you did to their mother. You are NTA, but instead a terribly generous aunt. NTA, you were very generous, but I get why the parents would be upset. No doubt the kids know what the others received and don't have the benefit of perspective yet on the expenses that come up during difficult years. Parents are usually always trying to keep things even, so none of the kids feel like another is the favorite. Maybe down the road you'll find it's possible to help the younger ones a little more, e.g., after they've graduated and are setting up households. In any event, you've given what you deemed appropriate for your budget. It's a gift, not a guarantee. NTA, your reasons are valid. Tell Mama Bear to hibernate. Sit down with your nieces, who are all old enough to understand. You love them equally, but you can't be fair because life happens. But you still want to help all you can right now. Maybe offer to even things out in the future, wedding presents, mortgages, grad school, reminding them that your generosity doesn't have a time limit.